Guys, welcome back to the course. In this lecture, we're gonna be discussing about climax volume identification. Okay, so let's get started. Um, this is where Wyckoff structures begins and identifying the stopping action. This is what the characteristics of the selling climax and buying climax are. So, selling climax anatomy is, it happens in downtrend. I taught you guys selling climax, very high volume. We see very high volume, and this is what the checklist that you need to look for. We are looking at the candle specifically. All right. So basically, when you see widespread down candle, you see a lot of widespread down candle, very high volume. Okay. Let me actually move that here. Okay. All right. So if I hear you saying I see widespread down candle, then first checklist on second selling climax is done, right? If I hear you saying, okay, I also see very high volume, it's like, see very high volume as the market is coming down, all right? I see the telltale sign of selling climax, okay? And then immediately AR follows, okay? And then these are the boundaries that actually sets the range of the accumulation. Okay, so now whenever you see this like very high volume widespread bar and then immediately air follows, that's your selling climax. All right, what happens in buying climax is the same thing, it's just the reverse of that. So imagine if I actually reverse it like that, you see, well, the color is changed a little bit, but you can see the upside volume would be very high, AR, automatic reaction, and then like all this goes like that. Okay. If you don't know what I'm doing, it's like I'm just pressing hotkey Alt and I, and it actually inverts the chart. Okay. So when looking at the distribution here, what we see, let me actually pick. All right. Let's just look at this one. All right. In distribution, what we see is like widespread up bars. You see, very widespread upside candle, right? And then as it goes up, we know that the volume is going to be very high. Okay, on the sign of strength bar, you see, volume was very high here, right? Then immediately AR follows, right? You see, very high, very climactic volume, and then AR follows, right? This actually sets the range that we see here. All right. So these are the climactic volume that we need to look for in order to identify the buying climax. All right. Um, okay. And one thing you need to know is that this happens in uptrend. So whenever you see these sort of characteristics, you must be hitting the telltale sign of buying climax. Okay. So climax versus exhaustion. We haven't discussed exhaustion. All right. It's just exhaustion is the opposite of climax. If you have like very intense activity in climax, right, in exhaustion you will have silent activity. It's not going to be much. All right. So in climax we see very high volume, we know. All right. uh, Very high volume spike. In exhaustion, selling exhaustion or buying exhaustion, we see moderate, no volume spike. Okay. We see wide spread. In climax, we see narrow to moderate candlesticks. All right. Uh, the stopping action in climax is very dramatic. You see, it's very dramatic. the stopping action. Well, whereas in exhaustion, the stopping happens gradual. Okay. Um, the automatic reaction in climax is very strong and like very quickly, whereas in exhaustion it's weaker. It's again it happens like gradually, weekly. Okay. um, Secondary test on uh, climax is often doesn't reach climax. You see, the secondary test, it doesn't reaching the climax often, immediately, but on exhaustion may exceed the exhaustion. All right. When we have like selling or buying exhaustion, the secondary test may, and it will definitely sometime exceed the exhaustion. Okay, that's what we will call it, breakout or breakdown. All right. So but both can start valid structures. The difference is, you're right, the intensity of the volume. All right. So volume comparison is, in climax we see very climactic action, clear spike above the average. You can see this is your average, this was, and this is your first standard deviation, second standard deviation, and this is your third standard deviation. Okay. Whereas in exhaustion we see moderate to no dramatic spike. Okay. Let me actually find some example for you. um, I think this was exhaustion, isn't it? Yeah, you see, this was your exhaustion based structure. Right, there wasn't much climactic action, like if you look into it. What happened? So in exhaustion we see this moderate to no dramatic spike, and you can see that this was basically your exhaustion. We didn't saw like very the climactic action around here, but on the downside we had this quick recovery. All right. Like the automatic reaction. Okay. So this was your exhaustion area, and you can see secondary test, well, it followed, but then it came down, then it's just break through this resistance, right? So this is how you can actually know for sure if your support or resistance area is going to get broken or not, uh, which will give you a lot of opportunity to take trade. Okay. Moving on. So volume at extremes, it actually represents the transfer of ownership, because when we have like very high volume, this is actually showing you the exchange at very high strength, meaning very high quantity. Okay. You can see at lows, which is on selling climax around here. See on this low, the selling climax, we see weak hands sell to strong hands. Weak hands are selling to strong hands, and this is where accumulation begins. And at highs on buying climax, what we see is strong hands sell to weak hands. Okay. Here strong hands are selling to weak hands. That's why we see moderate to high volume on distribution. Now you know. All right. Okay. And that is where distribution begins. All right. So let's. I've already shown you guys a couple of example on Bitcoin. Okay. So you can actually compare the secondary test as well: lower volume, narrower speed, supply drying up. You know. Uh, so why it matters is this matters in expecting setting our expectation for the climax. Okay. So like when we have like volume climax action happening, we can expect a strong automatic reaction or automatic rally. When we have exhaustion of the volume, we are expecting a weaker automatic rally or reaction. Okay, so you can see this was a little bit weaker than what we have seen before. Like if I show this one, this was very strong uh, upside move. You see, very quickly it recovered, right? Second is secondary test behavior. After climax, secondary test often doesn't reach climax level. Okay, but after exhaustion, secondary test may dip lower, which I've shown you guys. Indicator reading V levels, wave volume at extremes, high values, which shows climactic action. Okay, we see here this was very high volume. See, 327 units of volume. If I actually represent its like true value, uh, well, it's actually scaling down automatically. Um, so you just need to know that like this is very big volume so far. All right. So identification checklist for selling climax. All of this. So whenever you see and I hear you saying I see widespread down, you know uh, check that one out of the list. Okay, and then you say like, sir, I hear very high volume spike. Well, you're right. If you see quick bounce AR, again, check it out. Sets low, range low and high, and then this happens after downtrend. Well, you figured out that this was your stopping action, phase A. Now wait for the accumulation to build up. And then when this sort of event happens, boom, you're taking trade here, taking trade here, taking trade here. And this all happened because you figured out how to identify selling climax. Okay, moving on. Buying climax is like when I hear you saying, sir, I see a widespread candlestick on the upside. You see around here, right? I see widespread candlestick on the upside like this, very strong volume. Well, check it out, both of them, right? Quick pullback to AR, and then it sets range high and low. And this happened after or during the uptrend. All right. So now after like this secondary test pullback, you can take this trade. Like if it sustains there, like you can take above that like that. Okay, so let it build the cause, and the same sort of event you can apply it here as well. Okay, so all this is a result of identifying buying climax or selling climax accurately. you know so key takeaways from this lecture is selling climax, buying climax, widespread, very high volume, quick reversal. That's your climax. Exhaustion is a gradual stop, moderate volume, and still valid. And the next one, you should read it louder, okay? Climactic volume means transfer of ownership at extreme levels, okay? So next up, we're gonna be discussing about absorption, detecting hidden strength and weakness inside ranges. All right, so I'll see you guys in the next one.